You're standing at the edge of your life, holding a compass that's been pointing the wrong direction for years. What if I told you the secret to winning in life isn't about working harder, getting luckier, or waiting for the right moment, but about understanding one simple truth that most people spend their entire lives running from? Good evening. I'd like to talk with you tonight about something that took me 25 years to truly understand. 25 years. A quarter of a century of trial and error, of watching people succeed and fail, of studying the patterns that separate those who win from those who merely wish they could. And if I can save you even 1 year of wandering in the dark, then these few minutes together will be among the most valuable you've ever spent. You see, I've discovered something remarkable. The secret to winning in life, really winning, isn't complicated. It isn't hidden in some dusty philosophy book or locked away in an ivory tower. It's been right in front of us all along. But like most important truths, it's so simple that people overlook it, dismiss it, or simply refuse to believe it could be that easy. Here it is, you become what we think about. That's it. 5 words. But contained in those 5 words is the entire secret to a successful life. Now, before you turn away thinking you've heard this before, let me tell you what those 25 years taught me, because knowing something and understanding something are 2 entirely different things. When I was younger, I made the same mistake most people make. I thought success was external. I thought it was about circumstances, about opportunities, about being in the right place at the right time. I watched people work themselves to exhaustion, putting in 60, 70, 80-hour weeks and getting nowhere. I watched others seem to glide through life, achieving goal after goal with what looked like ease. And I wondered, what's the difference? Then one day, it hit me like a thunderbolt. The difference wasn't in their circumstances. It wasn't in their education or their connections or even their talent. The difference was in their direction. You see, most people don't have one. They get up each morning and react. They respond to whatever life throws at them. They're like ships without rudders, drifting wherever the current takes them. And then they wonder why they end up on the rocks. The winners, and by winners, I don't just mean the wealthy, I mean the truly fulfilled. These people know something the crowd doesn't. They know where they're going. Now here's something else those 25 years taught me. If you want to win in life, you cannot. You must not follow the majority. Look around you. Look at the statistics. Out of every 100 people who start their working lives at age 25, by the time they reach 65, only 5 will be financially independent. 5. The rest will either be broke or dependent on others for their survival. Do you know what that means? It means that if you do what everyone else does, you have a 95% chance of failure. 95%. The crowd is almost always wrong because the crowd doesn't think. The crowd reacts. The crowd follows. The crowd complains about circumstances while a handful of individuals create them. I learned this the hard way. I watched myself conform for years, doing what was expected, following the path of least resistance. And you know where it got me. Exactly where it gets everyone else who does the same thing. Nowhere special. The moment I broke away from the herd, the moment I started thinking for myself and setting my own direction, everything changed. Now, this is where most people stumble. They hear about thinking positively and setting goals, and they try it for a week or a month. When nothing magical happens, they give up and go back to their old ways. But here's what I learned: a goal without a deadline is just a dream, and a dream without action is just a wish. You've got to be specific. You've got to write it down. You've got to set a deadline and then work backward, creating a plan that will take you from where you are to where you want to be. Let me give you an example. When I finally decided what I wanted to do with my life, I didn't just say, I want to be successful in radio. I said, I will become one of the most listened to voices in broadcasting, helping millions of people understand the principles of success, and I will achieve this by working every single day on improving my craft and understanding human nature. See the difference? One is vague and powerless. The other is specific and compelling. Your goal must be clear enough that a stranger could understand it. It must excite you. It must be worthy of you. And then you must think about it constantly, not obsessively, but consistently, letting it guide your decisions, your habits, your use of time. Here's another truth I learned the hard way: success is never on sale. You can't bargain with reality. You can't negotiate with natural law. The price of success is always paid in full in advance. What does that mean? It means you must develop the discipline to do what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, whether you feel like it or not. Most people operate on feelings. If they feel like working, they work. If they don't, they don't. If they feel like studying, they study. If they feel like exercising, they exercise. But feelings are the least reliable guide you have. Feelings are reactions to circumstances. And if you're trying to change your circumstances, you can't let your current feelings dictate your actions. I learned to do the difficult things first. I learned to work when I didn't feel like it. I learned to persist when every fiber of my being wanted to quit. And I learned that the pain of discipline is temporary, but the pain of regret lasts forever. Think about that. Every day you don't move toward your goal is a day you'll regret when you're older. Every opportunity you let slip by because it was uncomfortable or difficult is one you'll wish you'd taken when time runs out. The price is paid in advance. Pay it willingly. Pay it now and reap the rewards for the rest of your life. And that brings me to the most important lesson of all, the one that took me 25 years to truly grasp. Time. You can get more money. You can get more knowledge. You can get more opportunities. But you cannot get more time. Every single person on this earth gets exactly 24 hours in a day. The billionaire and the beggar, the genius and the fool, all get the same allotment. The difference in their lives comes down to how they use those hours. I wasted years I can never get back, because I didn't understand this. I spent time with people who pulled me down instead of lifting me up. I spent time on activities that gave me pleasure in the moment, but moved me nowhere closer to my goals. I spent time complaining, worrying, and making excuses. When I finally woke up to the value of time, everything shifted. I became ruthless about how I spent it. I stopped saying yes to things that didn't matter and started saying yes only to things that aligned with my goals and values. I started asking myself a simple question every day. Is what I'm doing right now moving me closer to my goal or further from it? That one question changed everything. Success is directional, not accidental. Let me ask you something, and I want you to be honest with yourself. Nobody's listening but you and me. How many times have you looked at someone who's achieved real success, built a thriving business, created financial independence, developed a skill that sets them apart, and thought to yourself, they got lucky. They were in the right place at the right time. They had advantages I never had. If you've thought that even once, I need to tell you something that might sting a little. You've been lying to yourself, and that lie is costing you everything. Now, stay with me. I'm not here to scold you. Here because I told myself that same lie for years, and it nearly destroyed any chance I had at a meaningful life. You see, what I discovered after watching hundreds of people, successful and unsuccessful, happy and miserable, is this: the ones who win aren't wandering around hoping to stumble upon success like finding a $20 bill on the sidewalk. They know something fundamental that the others don't. They know exactly where they're going. Think about it this way. If you got in your car right now and just started driving, no destination, no map, no plan, where would you end up? Anywhere. Nowhere. Certainly not anywhere meaningful. You might drive for hours, burn through a tank of gas, and end up more lost than when you started. That's exactly what most people do with their lives. They get up each morning, go through the motions, react to whatever happens, and hope things work out. They're like sailors who untie their boat and let the wind take them wherever it wants. And then they're shocked, genuinely shocked, when they don't end up in paradise. But here's what those 25 years taught me: success doesn't happen to you. You happen to success. Every single person who's achieved anything worthwhile started with a clear destination in mind. They decided where they wanted to go before they took the first step. They drew the map before they started the journey. Now, I know what you might be thinking. But Earl, I can't predict the future. Things change. Opportunities appear. Doesn't planning limit my options? And that's exactly the confusion that keeps people stuck for decades. Having a direction doesn't mean you can't adjust your route. It doesn't mean you can't take advantage of opportunities along the way. What it means is that you have a way to evaluate those opportunities. You can ask yourself, does this move me closer to where I want to go, or does it take me off course? Without that reference point, every opportunity looks equally good or equally bad. You become paralyzed or scattered, saying yes to everything or no to everything, with no principle guiding your choices. Let me make this crystal clear right now. Today, you are heading somewhere. The question isn't whether you have a direction. The question is whether you chose it. If you haven't chosen your direction, life will choose it for you. And I can tell you from experience, life's default direction is downward. It's the path of least resistance. It's wherever the crowd is going, and the crowd, as I've said before, is almost always heading toward disappointment. But the moment you decide, really decide, where you want to go, everything changes. Suddenly, you're not drifting anymore. You're steering. You're making decisions based on your destination, not on your mood or your fear or what your neighbor thinks. You become the captain of your ship instead of a passenger hoping someone else knows where they're going. So here's my question for you. Where are you going? Not where you hope to go, not where you wish you could go. Where have you decided to go? Because until you answer that question clearly and definitively, you're just drifting. And drifting may feel safe, but it's the most dangerous thing you can do with your one precious life. The majority is almost always wrong. I want you to imagine something for me. You're standing at a crossroads. To your left, there's a wide, well-worn path. Hundreds of people are walking down it. They're talking, laughing, seeming comfortable. It looks safe. It looks like the obvious choice. To your right, there's a narrow path. It's less traveled. Maybe one or two people are on it, moving with purpose. It looks uncertain. It looks lonely. Which path do you take? If you're like most people, you take the wide path. After all, how could that many people be wrong? There's comfort in numbers, isn't there? There's safety in doing what everyone else does. And that's exactly how you guarantee yourself a life of mediocrity. Now, before you think I'm being harsh, let me tell you about my own journey down that wide path. I followed it for years. I did what my friends did. I believed what everyone around me believed. I made the safe choices, the expected choices, the choices that wouldn't raise eyebrows or invite criticism. And you know where that path led me? Straight to a life I didn't want. Here's what nobody tells you when you're young. The majority of people are not living the lives they dreamed of. They're living lives they settled for. They're living lives that happened to them rather than lives they created. And if you follow them, you'll end up exactly where they are. Let me give you some facts, cold, hard numbers that changed how I saw everything. Out of 100 people who start working at age 25, by the time they reach 65, only 1 will be wealthy. 4 will be financially independent. 5 will still be working because they have to, not because they want to. 36 will be dead, and 54 will be broke, dependent on family, friends, or the government for their survival. 95 out of 100 people fail to achieve financial independence. 95%. Those aren't my opinions. Those are the facts. Now here's the question that should shake you to your core. What were those 95 people doing that led them there? They were doing what everyone else does. They were following the crowd. They worked jobs they tolerated but didn't love. They spent money on things that gave them temporary pleasure but no lasting value. They complained about their circumstances but took no action to change them. They saved a little when they felt like it, spent a lot when they wanted to, and hoped everything would somehow work out. In other words, they were normal, average, just like everyone else. And being just like everyone else is a guarantee, an absolute guarantee, that you'll end up with what everyone else gets, which is not much at all. But here's the truth that set me free, and I hope it does the same for you. You don't have to follow them. You see, the crowd isn't wrong because they're bad people or stupid people. They're wrong because they're not thinking. They're reacting. They're conforming. They're doing what feels safe in the moment without considering where it leads. The crowd takes the job that pays a little more instead of the one that offers growth. The crowd buys things they don't need to impress people they don't like. The crowd watches television for 3 hours a night instead of working on their goals for 1. The crowd waits for permission, waits for the perfect moment, waits for someone to tell them it's okay to pursue their dreams. And while they're waiting and conforming and hoping, a small group of people, maybe 5 out of every 100, are doing something different. They're thinking independently. They're setting their own standards. They're willing to look foolish to the crowd because they know something the crowd doesn't. They know that popularity and success rarely go together. They know that if everyone agrees with your decisions, you're probably not making very bold ones. They know that the price of conformity is unrealized potential. When I finally understood this, really understood it, I stopped asking, what would most people do? And started asking, what would the successful person I want to become do? Those are two completely different questions, and they lead to two completely different lives. So let me ask you, are you following the crowd because you've thought it through and decided it's the right path? Or are you following them because it's easier, safer, and less scary than standing alone? Because if it's the latter, you need to know something. The crowd is heading somewhere, and it's not where you want to go. The good news, you can step off that wide path anytime you choose. Right now, if you want. The narrow path is still there, waiting for you. And yes, it's less crowded. Yes, it's less certain. But it's the only path that leads to the life you actually want. Goals are dreams with deadlines. Let me tell you about a conversation I had with a man who changed my understanding of success forever. I asked him, what do you want out of life? And he looked at me with complete sincerity and said, I want to be happy. I want to be successful. I want to make a difference. I nodded, then asked him, when? He looked confused. What do you mean, when? When do you want these things? By what date? What does success look like specifically, and when will you know you've achieved it? He couldn't answer. And in that moment, I realized he wasn't alone. Most people spend their entire lives wanting things without ever defining what those things actually are or when they intend to have them. They have dreams, not goals. And there's a world of difference between the two. Now, let me be clear about something. Dreams are wonderful. Dreams are where everything starts. The problem is, most people stop there. They dream about a better life the way a child dreams about being an astronaut. It's nice to think about, but there's no real plan, no real commitment, no real belief it will actually happen. And because there's no deadline, there's no urgency. Because there's no urgency, there's no action. Because there's no action, nothing changes. Years go by, and the dream stays exactly what it was, a pleasant fantasy that makes you feel good when you think about it, but leads absolutely nowhere. I know this because I lived it. For years I had dreams. I wanted to be influential. I wanted to help people. I wanted financial freedom. Beautiful dreams, all of them. Completely useless until I did something that changed everything. I wrote them down, and I put dates next to them. Suddenly everything shifted. The moment I wrote, I will become one of the most respected voices in broadcasting by December 31st, 1957, something clicked in my mind. It wasn't a wish anymore. It wasn't something that might happen someday if I got lucky. It was a commitment. It was real. And here's what happens when you turn a dream into a goal with a deadline. Your mind starts working on it. Not consciously, necessarily, but automatically. Your brain starts noticing opportunities you would have missed. It starts making connections between things that seemed unrelated. It starts organizing your time and energy around that deadline. But without the deadline, your mind has no idea what to do. It's like telling someone to drive to somewhere nice. They'll just sit there in the driveway, not knowing which direction to go, not knowing when to turn, not knowing when they've arrived. The deadline creates urgency. The specificity creates clarity. And together they create power. Think about this. If I asked you to write a report and I said, get it done whenever you have time, when would you do it? Probably never. There's always something more urgent, something more pressing, something easier. But if I said, I need this report by Friday at 5 p.m., suddenly you'd figure it out. You'd organize your schedule. You'd eliminate distractions. You'd find time you didn't think you had. The deadline would force you to prioritize, to focus, to act. Your life goals work the same way. When you say, someday I want to write a book, you're really saying, I probably never will, but it's nice to think about. When you say, I will complete the first draft of my book by June 30th, you've just created an entirely different reality. Now you know you need to write approximately altogether because what's the point? I never stick to them anyway. But that's not a deadline problem. That's a commitment problem. A real goal with a real deadline isn't something you aim for when it's convenient. It's something you organize your entire life around. You work backward from that date and figure out what needs to happen each month, each week, each day to make it real. You don't wait for inspiration. You schedule the work. You show up whether you feel like it or not. You honor the commitment you made to yourself the same way you'd honor a commitment you made to someone you respect. Because here's the truth. The deadline isn't about the calendar. It's about you becoming the kind of person who does what they say they'll do. Every time you set a goal with a deadline and achieve it, you prove something to yourself. You prove you can be trusted. You prove you're capable. You prove that your word means something, even when the only person listening is you. And every time you let a deadline pass without taking action, you prove the opposite. You prove that your dreams don't really matter. You prove that your goals are just wishes. You prove that you're not serious. So here's what I want you to understand. Your dream is waiting. It's been waiting for years, maybe decades. It's not going to come find you. You have to go get it. And the only way to do that is to stop dreaming and start planning. Pick one goal, write it down, give it a deadline. Make it specific enough that you'll know, without any doubt, when you've achieved it. Then work backward and figure out what you need to do this month, this week, today. Your dream is beautiful, but a deadline makes it real. The price of success is paid in advance. I want to tell you about the moment I almost gave up on everything I'd been working toward. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd been working on a script for hours, writing, rewriting, throwing pages in the trash, starting over. I was exhausted. My eyes burned. My back ached. And I had to be up in 3 hours to go to my regular job. I remember sitting there thinking, what's the point? Nobody's making me do this. I could just go to bed right now. I could stop this insanity and live like a normal person. And in that moment, I faced a choice that I didn't realize at the time would define my entire future. I could quit, put down the pen, crawl into bed, and let my dream of making a real difference in people's lives remain just that, a dream. Or I could keep going, even though every part of me wanted to stop. I kept going, not because I felt inspired or motivated or energized. I kept going because I understood something that most people never learn: success doesn't care how you feel. Now, let me tell you what society won't tell you, what your friends won't tell you, what the people trying to sell you quick fixes and easy solutions definitely won't tell you. Everything worth having costs something, and the price is always paid in advance. You don't get successful and then develop discipline. You develop discipline first, and then success follows. You don't get wealthy and then learn to save and invest. You save and invest first, and then wealth accumulates. You don't become excellent at your craft and then put in the hours. You put in the hours first, and then excellence emerges. The price always comes before the prize. Always. No exceptions. No shortcuts. No ways around it. And here's what makes this so difficult. You're paying a price now for something you can't see yet. You're sacrificing present comfort for future results. You're trading what feels good today for what will be good tomorrow. Most people can't do it. They want the success, but they don't want to pay the price. They want the outcome without the process. They want the harvest without planting the seeds, watering them daily, pulling the weeds, and wading through the seasons. So they look for easier ways. They jump from opportunity to opportunity, always hoping the next one won't require as much of them. They buy lottery tickets. They wait for their big break. They convince themselves that successful people just got lucky or had advantages they didn't have. But here's what I discovered when I studied successful people, really studied them, not just admired them from a distance. They all paid the price. Every single one. The writer who seems like an overnight success. She wrote for 10 years before anyone paid attention. The entrepreneur who built a massive company. He failed 3 times before he figured it out. The artist whose work now commands millions. She painted in obscurity for decades. They paid the price in advance. They did the work before they saw the results. They invested in themselves when nobody else believed in them. And here's the beautiful part, the part that changed everything for me. Once you pay the price, it's paid. You own what you've earned. Nobody can take it away from you. The skills you develop, the character you build, the habits you establish, those are yours forever. But you've got to be willing to do what most people won't do. You've got to be willing to work when you don't feel like it, to study when you're tired, to practice when you'd rather relax, to save when you'd rather spend, to persist when quitting would be easier. I learned to do the difficult things first, not because I'm special or different, but because I realized that discipline, real discipline, is nothing more than remembering what you want most when you're tempted by what you want now. In that moment at 3 in the morning, what I wanted most was to build something meaningful with my life. What I wanted in that moment was sleep. I chose what I wanted most, And that choice, repeated thousands of times over the years, created the life I have today. The price of success is paid in advance, yes. But here's what nobody tells you. The price of failure is also paid in advance. When you choose comfort over effort, when you choose distraction over focus, when you choose what's easy over what's necessary, you're paying a price too. You're paying with your potential. You're paying with your dreams. You're paying with the life you could have lived. The difference is this: the price of success is temporary. You pay it for a season, and you reap the benefits for a lifetime. The price of failure, you pay it for a lifetime, living with regret, wondering what could have been if only you'd been willing to do what was necessary when it was necessary. So here's what I need you to understand right now. Today, you're paying a price. The only question is which price you're paying. Are you paying the price of discipline, which leads to freedom? Or are you paying the price of regret, which leads to a lifetime of what if? The choice is yours. But understand this: you cannot have the prize without paying the price. Reality doesn't negotiate. Natural law doesn't bend. Success is available to you. But first, you must be willing to pay what it costs. Not someday. Not when it's convenient. Now, and I promise you this: when you look back years from now, you won't regret the sacrifices you made. You'll only regret the ones you didn't. The price is real. But so is the prize. And the prize is worth infinitely more than what it costs. Time, the only irreplaceable resource. I'm going to ask you to do something uncomfortable. I want you to think about someone you love, someone who matters deeply to you. Now imagine you received a call today telling you they only have 6 months left to live. What would change? How would you spend time with them? What conversations would you finally have? What would suddenly seem important? And what would immediately become meaningless? Now here's the part that should shake you. You just received that call. Except it wasn't about someone else. It was about you. You don't have forever. For a long time, there was always tomorrow. Until one day, I looked up and realized I'd spent 5 years saying someday about the same goal. 5 years. Gone. Vanished. Wasted. That's when something fundamental shifted in how I saw everything. I realized that time isn't just passing. It's the currency I'm spending to purchase my life. Every hour I spend doing something is an hour I'm trading away, permanently, for whatever that activity brings me. When I spend an hour worrying, I've purchased an hour of worry. When I spend an hour watching meaningless television, I've purchased an hour of numbness. When I spend an hour with people who drain me, I've purchased an hour of diminished energy. But when I spend an hour working toward my goal, I've purchased progress. When I spend an hour learning something valuable, I've purchased growth. When I spend an hour with people who inspire me, I've purchased momentum. Same hours, different purchases, completely different lives. Here's what changed everything for me. I started asking myself one simple question every single day, multiple times a day. Is what I'm doing right now moving me closer to what I want or further from it? That question became my compass, my filter, my way of evaluating every choice, every activity, every person who wanted a piece of my time. And I discovered something remarkable. Most of what I was doing, maybe 70 or 80% of how I spent my time, was moving me nowhere. I was busy, but I wasn't building. I was occupied, but I wasn't progressing. I was spending time, but I wasn't investing it. I was spending time with people who had no ambition and no dreams, and they were pulling me down to their level. I was spending time on activities that felt good in the moment, but left me empty an hour later. I was spending time worrying about things I couldn't control and complaining about circumstances I wasn't willing to change. All of that stopped the moment I understood that time is life itself. Every minute you waste is a minute of your life you'll never experience again. Every hour you spend on something that doesn't matter is an hour stolen from something that does. Most people treat time carelessly because they think they have plenty of it. They're young, they're healthy, they've got decades ahead of them. But here's the brutal truth. You might have decades, or you might have months. You might have years, or you might have days. Nobody knows. Nobody's guaranteed tomorrow. But even if you live to be 90, do you know how many days that is? About 33,000. Sounds like a lot, doesn't it? Until you realize that if you're 30 years old, you've already spent about 11,000 of them. They're gone. You can't go back and relive them. You can't undo the time you wasted. All you have is what's left. And what's left is getting smaller every single day. Now, I'm not telling you this to depress you or scare you. I'm telling you this because understanding the value of time, really understanding it, is what transforms people from dreamers into achievers. When you truly grasp that your time is limited, you stop tolerating things that don't serve you. You stop saying yes to obligations that drain you. You stop spending hours on distractions that give you nothing of value. You become ruthless about protecting your time because you finally understand it's all you have. The successful people I've studied, the ones who actually achieve their goals and build meaningful lives, they all have this in common: they treat time as their most precious asset. They guard it, they invest it carefully. They refuse to waste it on anything that doesn't align with their goals and values. They've learned what took me 25 years to learn. You can always get more money, more knowledge, more opportunities, but you cannot get more time. So here's what I want you to understand: the life you want, the success you desire, the impact you hope to make, the person you dream of becoming, it's all on the other side of how you spend your time. Not how you spend your money, not who you know, not what lucky breaks come your way. How you spend your time. If you spend it wisely, investing it in activities and relationships that compound in value, you'll build something extraordinary. If you spend it carelessly, letting it leak away on things that don't matter, you'll arrive at the end with nothing but regret. The clock is ticking right now. It's been ticking since the moment you were born, and it won't stop until the moment you die. The question is, what are you doing with the time between those two moments? Because that time, that irreplaceable, precious, finite time, is your life. Don't waste it.